In today's video, I want to talk specifically to people who are audit leaders, people who are in charge of internal audit groups, whether you're a chief audit executive or the head of your function, or even, if you're, many years into your career and you may not be the chief audit executive, but maybe you report to the chief audit executive. So you have a lot of responsibility. And one of the things that I hear most often from people that are audit leaders is they feel like they're on an island. Okay. They feel like they're on an island. Now, this island is not a tropical paradise, where you've gone on vacation, you're sitting back in your easy chair, getting some sun and drinking a Mai Tai or whatever it happens to be that you want to drink. But it's more like a deserted island, more like that. There was that old movie with Tom Hanks, where he was stuck on a deserted island and he had this soccer ball that he talked to. They feel like that. And what do I mean by that? Right. And I'm going to get into that and explain also some of the resources that are available to audit leaders that many audit leaders don't know are there. So I'm going to share some of that today, because a lot of the groups, a lot of the training that's provided is not actually targeted for audit leaders. It's actually more for the general internal audit population. So I'm going to get in and talk about that. But, getting off the island, I had somebody else who told me one time, he said, I feel like I'm in an island. I told you that people tell me that often. And he said, but it's not an island like the UK. It's more like Fiji. And while yes, Fiji is a tropical paradise, that a lot of people go on to vacation, what his point was, I feel like I'm on an island and I'm a long ways away from anybody else, a long ways away. From the UK, you can actually still see Europe. You can see France. It's that close. And so what does this mean? And why am I talking about it this way? Well, like I said, a lot of people feel this way. They use that as an analogy or metaphor for what they're feeling. And it's like this, most people who are audit leaders, they end up growing up within internal audit. They become the head of audit. And often they're very busy. They're very tactical in what they do. There's a lot of things to deal with. People on your team, other peers, meeting with the board, doing audits yourself, potentially, if you're in a smaller audit shop. And so there's just a lot of things that people are doing. And they tend to, as I said, be more tactical, just getting the day-to-day things done. And by doing that, they kind of isolate themselves into the day-to-day activities. And what can go on is, a quarter goes by, a year goes by, 2 years, 5 years, and you realize you haven't really talked to other people. You don't know what other people in the industry are doing. You're feeling certain ways. Maybe you're having challenges with team members or challenges with your board, and you feel like you're the only one who feels that way. And so you feel very isolated. You feel like you're the only one who is dealing with this. Now, if you're feeling that way, I can tell you this: you are not alone. You are not alone in feeling that way. Because again, I've been facilitating the Audit Leader Forum for many years now, and almost every time on that call that somebody shares and says, "Hey, I'm going through this. I don't think anybody else probably is," half the hands in the room go up and say, "I'm dealing with that same issue." Okay. So, one thing about being on an island makes you feel often like that you're the only one dealing with this, when in fact you are not, right? And so I'm going to go through and talk about some of the different resources and ways that you can get off the island if you want to. If you want to stay there, then that's just fine too. It's your choice. But I'm going to talk about and share some of the things that you can do. Now, another issue that audit leaders often have is they get caught in an echo chamber. Okay, and that's a term that I use that I think describes it well. Echo chamber. So, what does that mean? Well, they surround themselves with a few people who are saying the same thing. And so they're just hearing the same thing from similar people, right? It's like having a team and everybody on the team is exactly the same. They're all yes men, they're all yes women, they're all saying exactly the same thing. And so you don't get the diversity of thought. You don't get the diversity of experience. You don't have the benefit of having somebody call you out on your shit, right? And show you a blind spot that maybe you're not aware of, right? And they're called blind spots because we can't see them. It requires someone else from an outside perspective to see it. Okay. And so that's another trap that a lot of people get into. They're kind of isolated and they're only surrounded by a few people. And those few people are saying the same thing over and over again. So, again, why is that an issue? Well, because often it leads to some different things. And I'll share some examples. One of those examples is, if you only go, let's say, to IIA events, you only do IIA training, you only watch IIA webinars, you're only going to hear the IIA's perspective. And again, some of you may be saying, well, what's wrong with that? Well, it's only one perspective. There are lots of different ways to do internal audit. Each internal audit department actually looks different and should look different in every single organization. Now, what happens is often people are hearing things from the IIA and they feel like that's what they have to do and they're forced to do that. But that's just one perspective. That's one way of doing it. And often what happens is a lot of the things that are said by the IIA are great if you're a very large audit department. If you've got a few hundred people or a few thousand people in your department, no problem. You can be best practice kind of, according to what the IIA says if you want to, because you have the resources, you have the people, you have the budget to be able to do that. Now, doesn't seem like a big issue unless you're a small audit shop. And again, I hear this from lots of people, okay, to where they say, I hear all these things from the IIA and I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm a bad chief audit executive because I just can't do what they're suggesting. I don't have the people, I don't have the budget, and so I feel like I'm a failure. And you wouldn't think that necessarily, but I hear this from people all the time. I hear it from people in the Audit Leader Forum. I hear it from other chief audit executives that I talk to that actually say that. In fact, I was just presenting, helped facilitate an IIA roundtable in a city here in the U.S. And we were talking about the new audit standards, and this topic came up again. Where a lot of people said, hey, the new standards, these new technical requirements, topical requirements that I'm supposed to follow, I don't have the people, I don't have the budget to do it the way they say I'm supposed to do it. What do I do? Right? And so they were asking me that. And my approach has always been to be practical, to do what's best for you, what's best for your organization, what's best for your team. And that's going to look different for a lot of different people. But you see, if you're only hearing it from one place, if you're isolated, so you're not even hearing anything at all, or if you're in an echo chamber, so you're just hearing the same thing from the same people all the time, you never figure that out. You never understand and can contextualize what actually is best for you, right? And again, if you're being very tactical in what you're doing, you're probably not stopping and pausing and taking an hour or two a month to actually think strategically because you're so worried about things that you're supposed to get done. Oh, the next board meeting. Oh, the next whatever. Oh, the next whatever that you're dealing with. So let me talk about some of the resources now and some of the ways that you can actually get out of this echo chamber, get off of the island, and actually start doing work for your organization that is much more valuable. Okay. One of those is there is a program, and again, I put a couple of these that I'm going to talk about in the description to this video. So you have the link in that description and can go check it out and see if it's for you. But one is, often people get promoted into becoming a chief audit executive, but they've never been trained how to be a chief audit executive. They've just kind of seen what other people have done, maybe bosses that they worked for, and they just kind of come up with what they think is the best without knowing that there's other options that are out there. And so one of the courses, it's actually a certification course that I created, is called the Certified Chief Audit Executive. It's specifically designed for people who are either currently audit leaders, heads of internal audit, or people who that's on their career path. Maybe that's their next job. And in this, it's a 40-hour course, 40 hours of me and Hal Guerin, who have been chief audit executives several different times. And we've both spent years now after leaving being a chief audit executive of coaching chief audit executives. We share a lot of the things that you never get told before you get into the role. And so it's a way of, you being able to see what's possible. It's a way for you to be able to see maybe some of the mistakes that you might be making, or ways that you may be creating challenges that don't need to be there with how you're interacting with people. It helps you to think a little bit more strategically. It helps you to look at things like, I don't know, were you aware of this, that there's things you do before the audit committee, during the audit committee, and after the audit committee? And guess what? What you do during the audit committee doesn't really matter if you've done what you needed to before and after. But do you know what those things are, right? Because a lot of times you're much more effective if you do things right beforehand. And in beforehand, I'm not talking about creating slides. There's a whole bunch of things that you would do before the meeting even starts, before you even prepare the slide deck. Things that you would even do at the beginning of the meeting before it formally starts, right? Things like that are shared in that course, the Certified Chief Audit Executive course. Now, some of you may be listening to this and saying, well, I've been a CAE for a long time. I already know all this stuff. Well, okay, if that's what you think, if that's what you feel, then that's fine. But I will tell you that people who have just started as a CAE find this very helpful. And even someone who took it has had 40 years of experience in internal audit and has been a chief audit executive for 20 of those 40 years. And guess what? She found tremendous value in hearing those other perspectives, right? Because again, it's Hal and I have done this in several different organizations, and we've helped hundreds of people who are in that role. So, it's a different perspective. It's something else that usually you never hear. So that's one of the resources that's there. Another one is the Audit Leader Forum. I mentioned that before. That's a group. It's an online group, so there's no travel. We meet, once, twice a month, depending on the membership level that you're in. But it's an opportunity for you to meet with other audit leaders and hear exactly what's going on with them. All right. So what are some of the topics that are discussed in those kinds of meetings? Well, there's no formal agenda. We're not there to sell anything like you often get in roundtables. The agenda is actually set by the people in the group. So we talk about the things that are important to people in the group. But we also talk about some of the soft skills and some of the other things that you normally never hear about anywhere else. I've never been in a roundtable or any of these other typical, audit leader kind of things that are provided by the firms or by the IIA that talk about what we talk about. As an example, ninja phrases. Well, do you know what ninja phrases are? They're different ways of asking questions, different statements you can use, different communication methods you can use to really increase your influence, get people to do, what you would like them to do, and really develop the relationships. That's something that's only available in the Audit Leader Forum. In fact, I had somebody in the group reach out to me and say, hey, this is great information. Can I share it with my team? Where can they go to find it? I said, well, you can only find it in the Audit Leader Forum, but you can feel free to share that with your staff because he's a member of the Audit Leader Forum, right? So those are some of the things that we talk about. But, other topics, how to deal with the change in the standards, the new topical requirements, that's come up many different times. How best to deal with other lines of defense in your organization, how to deal with your peers, how to, navigate some of the things with the audit committee, especially recently around some things for AI, artificial intelligence, how you're using it, how your organization is using it, how you're auditing it. Those are some of the topics that we've discussed as well. But even other things around, one of the most challenging parts of being a leader is dealing with your staff. And so guess what? We talk about some of those leadership qualities that, again, you never get taught in internal audit. And I will tell you, I've been around the block a long time. Okay. I've been in auditing for over 30 years, and I have never found another training that actually teaches people how to be leaders in internal audit. You can go to leadership training, and believe me, I've gone to leadership training that costs $50,000. And I share that information with people in internal audit in the Audit Leader Forum, right? Most people don't get a $50,000 budget to go get leadership training, but you need it, right? But most of the time, again, it's all about the technical is usually what we have, but it's not the technical that will make you valuable in your organization. Another topic that we've discussed often is around, assurance versus advisory work. How much do you do? What's the kind of advisory work you should be doing? And so again, we don't ever tell anybody what to do, but we provide some context. We understand their context, and we provide recommendations. And it's not just from me, but it's from other people in the group as well. And so I'll give you an example. It's all respectful, right? So nobody's ever telling other people what to do, but there's a healthy discussion. And one time, one of the members in the Audit Leader Forum was talking about, how she was, trying to show value to her senior management and board. And she was using a method called cost avoidance. And so if you know what it is, great. If you don't, then, well, come to the Audit Leader Forum. We'll teach you. But she was using cost avoidance as the basis for determining a value on her department. One of the other members in the group just asked her a question. Well, why are you only considering cost avoidance or cost reduction? Why don't you also consider cost avoidance? And she went, huh? I don't, right? And she said about it, thought about it, and she started looking at how she was calculating value based on both cost reduction, but also on cost avoidance. And guess what happened? Well, she found that on the most recent audit that she had done, they helped the organization avoid over $450,000 worth of risk. And so when her CFO came to her and said, we got to cut budgets, she said, I'm not going to cut my budget. I'm not going to cut my people. And the CFO said, what do you mean? And she said, well, on this last audit by itself, we helped the organization avoid $450,000 worth of risk. So we're valuable to the organization. I'm not going to cut my people. And the CFO thought about it and said, okay, you're right. I see the value that you're providing. So, imagine how she feels instead of how most people are that are audit leaders that are scrambling to do way more than they can ever do because their headcount, their budgets, everything are so low, and often getting cut even more instead to be able to have the resources that she needs. So that's another option. The Audit Leader Forum is another option where it literally allows you the opportunity twice a month, if you want to actually stop and think strategically about how you're doing internal audit. Because I will tell you, that is one of the biggest game changers in being a chief audit executive, is when you actually move from tactical to strategic in your thinking and in the way that you're actually running your department. And again, a lot of you might think you're being strategic, but you're probably not. And how do I know that? Because again, just as an example, this last roundtable that I helped to facilitate for a local IIA chapter group, half the people in the room, when they were asking questions, it was all about the technical implementation. And they were totally missing the strategic message, right? But when you think about and you actually address things from a strategic and from a true leadership perspective, that's when things really change in your life, in your organization's life, in your team's life. And that's what, like I said, some of these resources will help you do. Now, again, those things may or may not be for you. That's fine. Another option as well is there are on cRisk Academy several different courses and certifications that specifically relate to audit leaders. Again, something that's different. I've been around for a long time, and usually I'll give you an example. Sometimes people will say, oh, this particular training or this thing is for audit leaders. And guess what the training is about? Telling you again how to follow the standards. Big whoop-de-doo shit, right? You already can read them. That isn't leadership, right? So if you want to think more strategic, if you want to actually be a leader instead of a glorified manager, then here's some different resources that you can get. And again, some of you may have taken leadership courses, have done some soft skills building on your own. And if you have, congratulations, well done. Most people don't do that. But where, again, a lot of the rub kind of comes in is you may learn something from some of these general leadership courses, but then sometimes it's hard to know how to apply it practically to internal audit. Well, that's what I do. I help people do that. I help, with the Audit Leader Forum, individual coaching as well on how to actually do that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for today because, like I said, most audit leaders that I talk to feel like they're on an island. Well, if you feel like you're on an island and you'd like to get off of it, I just shared with you in this video some different ways you can do it. And you can also reach out to me. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to see what I can do to help. So with that, have a great rest of your day today, and a great rest of your week as well. We'll see you on the next video.